Woo woo! Welcome to the lunch pail half hour. I love the lunch pail. This is blue collar. We just do the work, man. So this is called the Epic Bill Podcast #1 and live stream. Woo woo! Anyway, so today we're going to talk about comfort zone. If you're trying to do something great in this life, the comfort zone is your #1 enemy. It is your #1 enemy. I have had to spend a lot of time and had a lot of therapy, brain therapy, worked on my brain, trying to just get where I could get out of my comfort zone. You know what I mean? Which is like attacking your fears. So attacking your fears, and that expands your comfort zone. I was going to show I had a little diagram here. I learned this from Tony Robbins. I learned a lot of good things from Tony Robbins. But okay. So the one thing he showed was that this is you in the middle, and if you go out, so you're in your comfort zone is, let's say it's like right there where I just did that, which is it's probably more like right here, like if you don't attack it. And then if you start going out, you go after your fears and and you start going after those, your comfort zone moves out, it starts moving out. And then if you go after another fear, your comfort zone moves out to there, and then it could go out further. The more you go out of your comfort zone and attack your fears, the bigger the life you're going to have, because the comfort zone is your biggest enemy. If you just sit in that comfort zone, if you sit in your comfort zone, you're not going to do much in life. So for me, yeah, I was like, you could sit there. I will tell you, when I was younger, and I'm only 30 in my head, I'm 30. And, but when I was younger, man, I would be addicted to like the TV. The TV was like my comfort zone. I could sit there and, you could just mind numb yourself watching TV for hours, just whatever came on, you do it. So, what I've done to get out of my comfort zone is that don't have a TV. I don't have a TV, but I do inspirational stuff on YouTube. I try and stay out of the crap, I just try and do stuff, the mind numbing stuff. I try and do stuff that's just positive, but I really try to not put myself in any sort of start putting myself into some sort of a negative space, so I try to stay totally positive, so that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Go out and go after your goals and dreams, you know what I mean? And your fears. I like writing down your fears, and then you go after those fears, and you write them out, and that'll really kick you out of your comfort zone really quick if you go after your fears. So that's what I've done. If a new fear comes out, I'm going to attack it. Like if I find a new fear, if I find a new fear, I immediately go after it, or if an old fear starts to come up again. I just recently started swimming again. I took 8 years off from swimming, and I was definitely afraid of deep water, cold water, dark, deep, cold water, swimming in ocean, anything, even going over when I first started swimming, when I didn't really learn how to swim till I was like 35. Before that, I only knew how to swim across the pool one time, but I was deathly afraid of swimming. And so of swimming in deep water. but I just kept going out there. You know, you keep going out there. I got instruction on on swimming. I hung out with people who really know how to swim in rough water, deep water, and then I just keep getting in. I keep getting in, you know, I keep getting in the water, keep getting in the water. So that's what I'm encouraging you. If you want to get out of your comfort zone, if you got these freaking comfort zones like this, then what I'm encouraging you to do is push out, go after those fears, write out all your fears, to do the easy ones first, and then start taking on the bigger and the bigger and the bigger. And the bigger your comfort zone will get, and you know, when your comfort zone gets bigger, the bigger the goals you can achieve, and the bigger your life is going to be. Yep, that's what, if I find something that scares me, I immediately go after it. I come up with a plan to go after it, because I just do not want to have anything limiting my life. Jesse asked, what was the first comfort zone you ever had to face? Ever had to break, the first big fear? I'll tell you, I went to a Tony Robbins. This was really interesting. So a long time ago, I went to a Tony Robbins, seminar, and it was like, and he talked about like facing your fears and how important it was. And I remember, like, it was a 4-day conference. And on the 4th day, I mean, I think we walked across hot coals, and those were supposed to be our fears, represent our fears. And we walked across these hot coals. And I remember, and then it was like, my big fear that I wanted to really attack that weekend was my fear of talking in public. Huge, huge fear. Felt like I was going to die if I talked in public. And so by the end, I was so fired up that I said, there were 700 people at this conference I was at that he was doing. And I said, on the last day, when there's a Q&A, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm just going to ask anything, just so I could say that I freaking spoke in front of 700 people. And, and all supportive people, obviously, and my arm was like, it was like a lead weight when I tried to raise it, literally like a lead weight. I couldn't get it off my side. And so after this huge motivating weekend, I had this huge setback because I couldn't even ask a simple question in front of these 700 people because I thought I was going to die. That's the illogical brain, And, but I'll tell you what, when I went back home, I was more determined than ever to beat that fear of speaking in public, getting out of that comfort zone. At that time, I felt like I could talk probably to a conference table, maybe 8 people I felt comfortable with, maybe 10, and so I came back and I signed up for Dale Carnegie. He was big about speaking in public. He's passed away, I think, for a long time ago, but they still do courses on public speaking for Dale Carnegie. And so I signed up for his course, and then you're speaking in front of like 25 people or 30 people, and even though it was out of my comfort zone, it wasn't out of my comfort zone as 700 people. And then they teach you how to speak in public, and you keep doing it like week after week after week after week, and you just get better. And then on top of that, I was going to these speech, local speech things where people talk, they give little speeches, and a local group. And I did those, and I attacked it. And then, and now at this point, I've done, not tons and tons of public speaking. I still get nervous when I do it. I still get really nervous when I do it, but I've spoken in front of like 700 people. I think I've spoken in front of 1,300. I spoke at like a high school graduation, it was like 1,300 people. And yeah, I was nervous, but I'm able to do it, because I kept going after those comfort zones. Does anybody have a comfort zone that they want to share that they're looking at breaking out of? Jesse, you got anything you're looking at? So I think for me, like I said, when I talk to people, a lot of the, a lot of what people's fears are, including mine, they're irrational. They're your brain is keeping you a prisoner. Oh, so Jesse has some running blocks. That's great. She's just starting to run. She might have a 50K on the horizon. So, yeah, I mean, do you have any specific running blocks you're trying to get past? Oh, so she said afraid she can't get enough air, man. That's interesting because I have been in situations where I couldn't legitimately get enough air. Your body will, I think if you go out there and run, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you're knock on wood, yeah, I don't know. I've run out of air and I didn't die. I mean, I was up on Aconcagua. So it's a 22,800 foot mountain climb, the highest mountain in the Western Hemisphere, and I made it to 22.2, and you got 600 feet to the top. We've been climbing for like 8 or 9 days, to get used to that acclimatization, and then when I'm going for the top, the last day with that 600 feet to go. We took a break, we'd been going for a while that day, and we took a break, like I said, with 600 feet to go, and I sat down and I couldn't stand back up. I couldn't breathe at all. I was like, those shallow breaths, man. And the guy says, okay, you got to go now. And I couldn't go, so I was worried I couldn't even make it down the hill because I was so freaking wiped out. But somehow I did. So I think, yeah, if you, I think you would probably throw up on the side of the road or something before you would, like all the way run out of air. I mean, I've been where I'm really, really, like, I don't know. I see these guys nowadays, they lay on their back on the track. We never did that. We kind of walked around and you put your hands on your knees till you can get your breath, after, because when I was running, I ran quarters, I ran 800s in high school, and I would give everything I got. So I'm sure my heart rate was way the heck up there. So I think I would just push through that one, Jesse. I would test it out, see what happens. Get on a treadmill or someplace safe, and where if you ran out of wind, I think you're just going to slow down before anything bad happens, But I would push. They do like threshold training, I've done that where you get on a treadmill. I can't remember how it worked. They're doing it's like a VO2 max training where they're pushing you as far as you can go, and you just finally just can't go any further, but nothing weird happens other than you just can't go any further, Yeah, lightheaded, yeah. That's interesting. The lightheaded. So, yeah, you feel like you're going to pass out. You just need to get in better shape. That's all there is to it. Keep training. Keep training. Try it. I think you should stop right before you pass out, though. Most scariest. Yeah, the most scariest experience that I've experienced with my comfort zone, I would think it's been like mountain climbing, because I have a big fear of heights. I fight it. You never really are all the way over it. But, definitely a big fear where I've been up climbing Denali and got where it's really steep and just started gripping and froze up, just literally like froze up to where I couldn't go any higher. And I had to tell the guy, man, I can't go any higher. It's too, I don't know what I said, but I just said I can't go too high. But the truth was it was too steep for me. I wasn't used to these big steep drop-offs. So I'm just gripping thinking I'm going to die, And so they eventually, I had to go down. But what I did to get out of that comfort zone was I said, okay, I got to attack that. This is terrible. I'm never going to be able to climb a Denali if I can't get over those steep parts, you know. And we're all roped together. We all have axes to dive into the snow or into the side of the hill if we fall. And so you're relatively safe, you know. You got 4 or 5 people on a rope, and so it's more was in my head, you know. And so I thought, okay, how can I attack that fear of heights and falling? Skydiving. I went up and I said, how can how can I get up in a plane? If I skydive off a plane, I'm going right at my fear. So I signed up for a tandem skydive where a guy's attached to your back, and he's got thousands of dives. By the way, that's one of the ways that I help myself to get out of my comfort zones is I go like, well, this guy has like 6,000 jumps and he hasn't died. So what are the odds of me dying skydiving when I'm attached to this guy if he's had so many dives, but you still like to, so that gets me onto the plane at least. And when we shimmied up to the side and they opened up the door, oh my God, it's like unbelievable. I remember I had just come back from a commercial flight and they're like, hey, everybody button up their seatbelts. We have some turbulence. And then here, it's this little dinky plane that's turbulent all the time. And then they open the door and all this wind's coming in. It's the exact opposite of being on a commercial flight. And then it's like, okay, don't strap in. Start inching your way towards the door, And then after I jumped, man, I remember I was absolutely petrified, and I was stiff as a board. And because I thought I was going to die. I was looking at the ground and they go, oh, you feel like you're floating. Oh, that was bullshit, bull crap. I felt like I was going down at the ground 120 miles an hour, which I think was the speed that I was at. And the guy pulled the parachute and I was so grateful that the chute went off. I couldn't believe it. And when we finally landed, the guy says, I've never jumped with anybody as stiff as you were. I go, dude, that's because I thought I was going to die the whole way down, So that's what so you got to face those fears to get out of the comfort zone and then grow your life. Because by facing that fear, the next weekend, I went out and did a bungee jump because that scared, obviously it's kind of similar to skydiving, but you're close to the ground, so you could definitely see it. But and I faced that fear, and then the next time I went to Denali, less afraid. You know what I mean? Less afraid. You're always getting it under control to where you're less afraid. And so that's what I did. Now, does anybody? So Jesse, yeah, you got to ease into that. Okay. Having some technical difficulties, but back on. So like I said, I think with the mountain climbing and the rock climbing and you keep going after, and it's horrible the first time you try it, just absolutely horrifies you. You know what I mean? And then every time it's a little bit easier. But those fears, those big fears, and they will come back. Like me jumping in the water and swimming in San Francisco Bay in the rough, cold water as I was trying to make this last English Channel attempt, which unfortunately I wasn't able to make my 6-hour swim. So I re-signed up again for 2027. So I'll have more time to train. But it was like I'm finally, after like a year and a half of being back swimming, and I put off jumping in the bay for like 6 months at least, just because I wasn't ready to face that fear again yet. So I'm just swimming in the pool, And then finally you get to where you got to jump in the bay. And it was like those fears all came back again. If it was rough and windy, they all came back. And you just got to knock them down again. They go down quicker the next time, So I was swimming today and it was pretty windy out there this morning. And it's just not as bad, I mean, it took a lot less to get that fear down of swimming in the rough water and the cold water, So that's what I would be encouraging you to do. Write out this, if you want to get out of your comfort zone, which that's the only way you're going to achieve big things in life. You're not going to achieve big things by sitting in your comfort zone, you know? So you need to get out of that comfort zone, and the further you can get out of it, the further your comfort zone grows. You know, like obviously jumping out of a freaking airplane was really huge on my comfort zone. I mean, you know, like fear list. So when I jumped out of that, all of a sudden, wow, if I could do that, what else could I do? You know, I was specifically trying to use it for mountain climbing, but I'm sure it helped me with a lot of other areas in my life to gain confidence, you know. So I would just definitely go after your biggest fear. You know, you start out with your easy fears, get out of those comfort zones. You know, like I know one was I had a fear of rats. And I had read a book a long time ago, and the guy had a fear of rats. And he killed a rat, barbecued it, and ate it. And I said, okay, my fear of rats isn't that bad that I got to do that. But I was walking down this street, and I saw this big, it was dark, you know, kind of you could see by the street light, and I saw this big rat run down this alley. And I go, man, this is a good chance for me to face that fear of rats. So I followed that rat down that alley, man. I had my little cell phone light, you know, out, and I'm looking around and you know, looking by the dumpsters, looking by all this, just though, you know, like, yeah, yeah, he knows it was G. Gordon Liddy. You're right. That's who it was. Woo, woo. Yeah, you remember that book. Anyway, he really faced his fear by eating a rat. I had no urge to eat a rat, but it did help me just that I was willing to follow one down this dark alley, you know, a big one, the size of like a cat. But anyway, so yeah, I'm big about, like, if I find a new fear, I'm going to go right after it, man. And that's what, if you want a big life and you have big dreams, you got to go right after those fears, man. And the best thing to do is, like, you know, start out with the easiest fears, you know, like following that rat down the alley was easier than, you know, some of the other ones. But the other ones that really stick, because this was a long time ago I wrote these goals out, I mean, these fears out. But the one where the speaking one was really hard for me. And that was one where I wanted to be able to speak in public and talk to people and do stuff. And that was, you know, that was huge. So that I was able to, you know, conquer that fear. And now to this day, like I said, I think I've talked in front of, like, you know, 1,500 people. Does anybody else have a fear that they're facing right now? Oh, Jesse had a good question. Can you speak on how fear disguises itself as logic and excuses? Oh, it does, man. When I'm afraid of something, man, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna make every excuse in the book to not do it, you know. And you know, on my wall it says no excuses, you know. And I thought about it. I go, yeah, I do make excuses sometimes, but then I eventually, even if I make an excuse, I eventually come back after it because I believe in the no excuse thing, man. You're not gonna get anywhere in life if you make excuses, like. So those fears, you're going to make, if you're going after a big enough fear, you're going to make a ton of excuses to not go after it. It takes a lot of courage. And it was a big deal when somebody told me, or I watched a video where a guy said what courage meant. Because I thought courage, people who were courageous and brave and everything, I thought they were fearless. And you know what it turns out? They're not. They're just like you and me. They get afraid. The difference is they frickin' do it anyway. They go after that fear anyway. And they're afraid and they go after it. And that's what I'm telling you. Like when I jumped out of that plane, I was scared shitless. And I jumped out of that plane anyway. So that's what I'm encouraging you. You know, you have all this fear, but it's in your head, you know, it's in your head and it's limiting your life. Know that those fears are limiting your life. You know, I know I listened to David Goggins, you know, interview, and he talked about going after his fears too. And he's, you know, he's the ex-Navy SEAL guy, and and he went same stuff. He was afraid of flying, and he learned to fly a plane. Right here, he's afraid to fly, and he learned to fly a plane because he was attacking his fear. And I just love that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think if you study these great people who've done great things in life, big achievers, that they've tried to go after their fears where they could. And for sure, they gotta be, because you can't have a lot of fear and do the stuff that people are doing, So anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's just like that whole fear thing, man, that really opened my eyes when I learned that from Tony Robbins, that it was limiting my life. And so I would definitely do that, Jesse. And like I said, yeah, you'll make excuses. We don't want to go after our fears, say, and I think your mind will kind of screw with you, or my mind will screw with me a lot of times and make it seem like a different excuse, like, oh, I just don't have time. I'm busy, I'm busy. I was so busy, I made that thing about like jumping out of a plane and bungee jumping. I made that list up like 20 freaking years ago. And you know how long it took me to do it? Probably about 18 years till I finally had the courage to do those things. But I was always too busy to jump out of a plane, and I was too busy to bungee jump. I was too busy until I was trying to climb a mountain and couldn't do it unless I got over, at least kept my fear of heights at bay. I'm not saying I conquered them. I just keep it at bay, So you gotta you gotta, those fears that you don't want to face, that you're gonna make excuses about, why you don't do them. Those are the biggest ones you have to go after. And your life will start expanding. Your life, your goals, you'll start being able to hit bigger goals, put bigger goals on your list, because you'll think, hey man, I went after that big fear. And so if I could do that, I could definitely go after this big goal, and your life will open up that way. There's no way, if I didn't go after those fears, a lot of the things I've done, there is no way I could have done them at all, like zero. It's just that I made that list out, and I was just going to go after those fears no matter what. And like I said, even with that reside that I had, those two really bad fears of jumping out of a plane, and I still put off for like 18 years. That's not a good way to be successful at big things, by putting things off for 18 years. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, so if anybody has, like things they use to comfort themselves to not go after those fears. Like I said, I use TV. I also had a decade of drinking and partying, that I went nowheres during that decade on my fears and stuff. I wasn't able to do any big things because I was always like kind of numbing myself. If a big goal or dream came up, I was numbing myself. So yeah, what I would encourage you to do is maybe write down one fear that you're going to take on in the next week, and then maybe you could share it, because I'm looking at doing these things like Tuesday and Thursdays. I'm going to see how it goes, like twice a week, doing these live streams and answering questions and telling my stories, of what I've done to get these limiting beliefs and fears and different things to try and elevate yourself so you can go after all the big things in life that you think aren't even possible, and then they all of a sudden, it's like they become possible. If you told me I was going to climb Denali like 20 years ago, that I'm going to climb the world's coldest mountain, and like 5 or 6 people die every year up there. People have died when I've been on the mountain. If you would have told me I would have the courage to do that, there's no way. But I worked on these fears, worked on these things, worked on, learning to mountain climb, worked on my skills, and eventually then all of a sudden it becomes not a dream anymore, it becomes a goal. A dream is just you're thinking about it, you're dreaming about it. But when you put it down on paper and you come up with a plan, then it's a goal, And so that's one of the things that I'm, been trying to do is, and the thing is, like, Oh, he's got an irrational, Luke's got an irrational fear of the concept of money. A lot of people have that. I went bankrupt. Like, I had no fear about ever being broke or anything, Luke. And I became I opened my own video stores. You know, I saw Blockbuster in Hollywood. Well, we were before that with credit cards. You know, and zero fear, and just really went after it. I put everything into it, and never worried about money at all. Like zero. Like I always knew it would work out. Just my belief was that it would always work out. And then I went through a big bankruptcy, you know, like when the video industry started collapsing, I was one of the first to go. We had 13 stores. We had won a you know, video store of the year award, you know, retailer of the year award. Highly successful, probably in the top 20 for chains in the nation, because we did so much volume per store, you know. And then to go through a bankruptcy, it was, you know, a $10 million chain going through a bankruptcy really broke my confidence. And I'm telling you, I've been working hard at getting that money. I became irrational about money then as a fear. And the whole money thing, you know, and I'm not saying I'm just getting better now at it, because I've faced that, you know, like I meditate now. I've calmed my brain down, because that bankruptcy was a trauma. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And so, yeah, I would recommend like writing down, what about money makes you afraid? You know what I mean? It's, you know, I've been bankrupt. I didn't die. You know, I didn't die. My wife left, but I still didn't die. Woo woo. We never, you know, unless it kills us, we keep going, man. And so, yeah, the fear of money, I mean, I would try and get down deeper to what exactly you're afraid of. And then, you know, it's usually something very irrational, you know, that you can, and even if the worst case happen, where you're trying to make money and the worst case happens, you're still going to survive, you know, and you're going to have knowledge, and you're going to have learned. And, you know, I mean, I felt like I had the worst case for me happen, which was a big bankruptcy, and my wife left in the same week I filed bankruptcy. So that was pretty traumatic for me, and yet I'm still alive and kicking. And you know what? It made me determined about doing these events and stuff, is what it did. It said, you know, my purpose is something different than just making money. I mean, you know, we need to make money because it is, you know, it gives us freedom. It lets us, you know, you don't have, my goal with always has been with making money is I don't want to say no very often, you know. You want to be able to go after opportunities, and you want to travel, or you want to go, for me, traveling is always to go do an event, you know, and I like to bring, you know, my team with me if I can, if it's a team event, you know. So anyway, I would, yeah, I would definitely try to figure out what exactly you're afraid of about money, or if you lost the money, or if you're, you know, I know some people have the thing where, you know, people are going to be, you, yeah, you can get people definitely jealous if you make money, you know, definitely people can be jealous. But, you know, you got to be, if you want to be one of the 1%, you got to deal with all those things that happen, because there are going to be negative people who throw stuff at you. And the more you get, you know, you just get you got to get thicker skin, you know, and that's just by, if you're worried about criticized or this or that, you just have to throw yourself in the fire, and just, you'll eventually get used to it, you know. You know, those, you can't, you know, those guys who are the big multi-million followers on YouTube and stuff, they got to have a ton of hate emails, texts that come through, or, you know, and they got to be able to ignore it. Yeah. Anyway, hey, I think we got our 30 minutes in today. So let's we'll pick this up on Thursday. We're gonna do it again. Woo woo! What is today? Maybe no. Is today. I don't even know what today is. But anyway, we're doing them Tuesday and Thursday, and I'm shooting for 3:30. So thanks everybody for your support, and bring your lunch pail. This is Blue Collar. We just do the work. We do the work. We don't make excuses. We do the work. And if we do make excuses, we get over them really quick. Woo, woo. Lunch pail, half hour. Thanks.